last year was he paid homage to those teams when Abilene finally broke through and won its first state title since 1956. I remember calling the state championship telecast for Fox Southwest, and he talked about, he said that laid the groundwork for the great tradition of Abilene high school football. And so and even though they had not won a title since '56, it kind of, now I guess going out there, you see the mania that was there in the big country region in the 50s when they won 49 in a row from 54 to 56.
No question about it. And of course we could not have gotten out of Abilene without someone bringing up Abilene Cooper and that heartbreaking, tantalizing, controversial loss at the state championship game on the 1-inch line, I guess it was, to Austin Reagan. So it was a very pleasant and interesting stop in Abilene, and of course we're here now tonight at Georgetown. But and we started off this tour in Killeen. So so far it's been a very interesting tour, and I'm glad to be on it again.
Well, the funny thing is that if you talk to Reagan High School graduates, and we've had some that were around and part of that Reagan '67 state championship team, they say, "Oh, it wasn't controversial at all. We did our job. We stopped Jack Mildren at the 1-inch line, and that was that, and time ran out." Depending on your perspective.
That's right.
But Dave Campbell is with us, and again, 390 Live is the number. We'll get your calls here in just a few moments, but. First of all, point of business. Now you're going to be up in Georgetown I think at Don Hewlett Chevrolet. Is that right? What time will you guys be up there today? At 5. Okay, we'll be up. They'll be up there at Don Hewlett this afternoon at 5 o'clock. So make sure you can get out there for that as well. We always start in talking about the magazine. So I'm going to do that because even in this climate of the turbulent waters of college football realignment. And you and I were talking about the slimmer, trimmer version of the Big 12 Conference, that sort of thing. And we'll get to all of that, and I'm sure fans will probably have some questions about it. I always like to start talking about the magazine. It is a story worth telling and retelling every year. And the question I always ask you is, could you have possibly foreseen everything that this magazine has come to represent for football fans in this state, and what it has become, really? And every year when I ask it, the question becomes even more and more irrelevant because it's directly proportional to the population and the popularity of the magazine as well. So I would imagine the answer is still no. You probably couldn't have envisioned it being like this.
I could not have, Craig, not anywhere in the world. I'm sure that as I would maybe be awake at night and dream what might happen, but no, I was just really hoping that we could survive for another year. And really, we were so excited to be doing something like that, something we loved, something that we were thought had great potential, and something that really had not been done before in the state on that level. And I've had so many coaches tell me, Spike Dykes is one, but there were some coaches at the Texas Sports Hall of Fame last weekend telling me. In fact, I think the coach from San Saba was saying that, or maybe it was from Goldthwaite, saying that before this magazine came along, you just did not hear about great football players that were not in your section. If they were 100 miles away or 200 miles away, you didn't know anything about them until maybe the playoffs started. But once the magazine came along and started getting established, and everyone knew where all the top high school players were, and of course then we tried to go in very thoroughly on the old Southwest Conference, and I'll say right here and now that I miss the Southwest Conference just fervently. You were with me at the Texas Sports Hall of Fame Selection Committee meeting a couple of weeks ago, and they have opened a wonderful Southwest Conference wing there, and I recommend anyone who has a strong fondness for the old Southwest Conference to take the time, make the trip to Waco, and inspect that wing.
It is absolutely remarkable, by the way. If you're going through Waco and you get a chance to go by the Texas Sports Hall of Fame, please do, and then check out that wing on the Southwest Conference. It's tremendous. And Dave would never say this, so allow me to say this. Go in and check the room it's supposed to resemble at Dave Campbell's office, and there is a life-size representation of you, although you've largely downplayed that life-size representation because you said where did the red hair come from, right?
Well, that's right. I call it an effigy, Craig. I'm just waiting for a hanging, but anyway, I'm very honored that they thought of doing that. I didn't know a thing about it until they came to my wife Reba and asked for if I had some old clothes that she could give them that they could use to clothe that mannequin. And they said something back in the 60s and 70s, and she said, well, all his clothes are back from the 60s and 70s.
Well, the magazine itself, like you said, when you were in your early days as the sports editor of the Waco Trib-Herald, certainly before the start of the season, you would write and your staff would write previews of what's to come in Baylor, of the Southwest Conference. You had the old Southwest Conference press tour, that sort of thing.
That's right.
And then you would probably have the favorites in the area in terms of high school football, right?
Central Texas, the areas that we covered in the newspaper, on the sports pages. But in in 59 it all began, when we started thinking about, myself and a very, very talented member of my staff named Al Ward. And I think Al is still here in Austin and living in retirement after a long and illustrious career with the NFL. But we started thinking about what the national magazines were doing and how much better we thought we could do with strictly a Texas-oriented magazine, covering the college scene, not only the college scene, but the high school scene, which the national publications were ignoring entirely. So that's the premise we started on, and it was a ton of work, but it was great fun in doing it, and it certainly has turned out well.
As evidence of that, when I was a kid, I remember this, and I was well into my teens now. This would have been to mid to late 70s. But at my grandparents' house, in an old stack of magazines, like up in the attic, was a 1961, this is in North Carolina, so it was a 1961 copy of Street and Smith. So I pull out this 1961 copy of Street and Smith magazine, and I look through it, and it would be just a little bitty paragraph on specific conferences and teams across the country. So it did very little justice individually to the conferences while trying to paint everything with a broad brush.
No question about it, and you know, I've told this several times, innumerable times, I guess, as a matter of fact, but in researching how Street and Smith was doing it and how some of the other publications were doing it. Dell publication was called the Stan Woodward publication and all that. And looking to see what they had on the Southwest Conference, and I was impressed with how many errors of fact they had and how many typographical errors they had, because I knew the Southwest Conference well, and they had plenty of errors that year. But what really hacked me off was the fact that they left out my alma mater, Baylor, entirely. So I decided, surely something better can be done than that.
That was the last straw.
The last straw.
We saw that. So the Texas Football Magazine launched in 1960, and we'll talk more about that. We're going to take your calls coming up as well. 390-LIVE, the number. It's 390-5483. Pound 1300 for Sprint phone customers. Again, every caller to the program will receive an autographed copy of Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine, the 2010 edition, and we'll get right to your calls coming up here on the Longhorn Station, AM 1300 The Zone. www.longhornstation.com. Jacob.
It's time to answer summer's biggest question.
Okay.
Okay,
so the first three callers are Zach, Chris, and Don. Is that correct? So that'll give you some names. Z-A-C-H will be Zach. Will be one of them.
I will simply fix the leaky faucet in the guest bathroom. I will go to Ace, and I will get it done fast.
And then, I will not leave the couch till Monday morning.
Right now, get the Craftsman Auto Hammer or Multi-Tool for just $99.99 each and get a full price mail-in rebate on the Craftsman 104-piece mechanics tool.